It's my top stacks on DraftKings and FanDuel for week 12, and we're starting right now. What's up, guys? Welcome to another DFS video. If this is your first time here and you want to become a more profitable DFS player and get better at betting, start now by subscribing to the channel. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss anything along the way. And if you're already a Holkamaniac, you know exactly what time it is. Smash that like button and we'll get rolling. I have 3 stacks for you guys yet again. Was a nice week for this video in week 11. Talked about John Brown and Josh Allen, so hopefully you guys got on that. Also talked about whenever there's a very chalky stack or chalky game that everyone's talking about, if that game happens to fail, you can really leverage a lot in GBPs by just having unique correlation. So we'll try and dig a little bit deeper, but also give you guys a little bit of savings as well this week. So I'm going to start with a situation that I think could definitely gain some steam as the week goes on. But Baker Mayfield, and going to attach him to his wide receivers, Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry. But let's start with Baker. It is the matchup against Miami. And if you did want to roll someone back on the other side of this stack, it would be Gesicki for me, who I'll talk about as well. But Baker Mayfield, 5,900 might be a pretty tough price tag to get to. Obviously priced up for the matchup against Miami. But the team total is very solid, almost 28 points. They are a pretty heavy favorite at home. Home favorite quarterbacks, if we really just wanted to get down to it, that is one of the most profitable stacks that there is in all of the quarterback position. So I'm interested in Baker. I do think that this is a spot where Cleveland's offensive line has been a big problem this year for Baker, in particular, someone that hasn't handled the pressure very well this year, but I don't think that Miami is going to be able to get to him. So Miami is a team that does have one of the lowest pressure rates in the entire league this year, 26.8% per Sports Info Solutions, giving me a ton of pressure data each and every week. So I think this is kind of a get right spot for this offense. They're finally starting to get healthy as well. The addition to Kareem Hunt, all of that. But as far as the weapons, I do think that Chubb is going to be pretty popular in this spot. A lot of people are going to want to play the running back against Miami, 29th against the run, 32nd at running backs in the passing game. But Kareem Hunt is definitely cannibalizing his upside, and I think definitely taking away any type of floor that he had in the passing game. So I'm not so much on the run game. Maybe that ends up burying the stack if Chubb ends up going nuts, but 8,100 is just too expensive for me. I'd rather play the other side of this game and go to the pass catchers. So Odell Beckham, he is 7K, but I don't think there's anyone on Miami that can really stop this guy. The volume has been there. So if we're just talking about things that really matter at the wide receiver position, weighted opportunity rating, so target market share, air yards market share, it's basically one metric for that. Top 2 on the entire slate, it's him, it's Michael Thomas, it's Julio Jones, who we'll get to. So I'm interested in that side of it. I think Odell at 7K is pretty expensive, but I think this is a spot where he could finally go off and kind of realize some of that volume that he's been seeing. On the other side of it, I do think that Jarvis Landry is still someone that could eat in this spot, 6,300. Pretty expensive for him as well, but I do think the team total is so important at the wide receiver position that I am going to attack this Cleveland side of the passing game heavily this week. And talking about weighted opportunity rating, Odell right there at the top, but Jarvis Landry still top 10 in that metric as well. And I will say that Miami has been a team that you could beat in the short area of the field. So 28th in the league at defending the short passes. I do think Jarvis Landry is an awesome guy to pair with Baker. So Baker, OBJ, Jarvis Landry. And I mentioned if I was going to run it back with someone on the other side, it might be Gesicki, just because I think that the price is a spot that makes him a decent way to save some salary. I think a lot of people will still go to Devontae Parker, who's totally fine, 5,200. He's been actually really safe this year. So I think that if you did want to go with Parker instead of Gesicki, in tournaments, I'm going to try and take advantage of these spots where I think there's going to be a ceiling here at least one more time this year because of the usage that's been there, because he is a good athlete. He might not be the best player, and I do think that you might honestly go broke kind of chasing the Gesicki blow-up spot each and every week. But against Cleveland, I do think that he's one of the better bringbacks. It takes care of that tight end position that's historically just harder to project in general because the volume isn't always super solid. But Mike Gesicki, 3,400, someone that is third highest on the entire slate in routes run over the past 4 weeks. Just to give you a little bit of context there, he's at the same amount of routes run that Zach Ertz has over that same period. So not a terrible matchup, kind of middle of the pack, and it's a really low total. So I think Gesicki at 3,400 in tournaments where I think Devontae Parker will be much more popular in some single entry or maybe in cash game situations. So I think Gesicki is someone that could benefit from Fitzpatrick trying to fit into tight windows. I actually like Fitzpatrick quite a bit in this spot as well. I think this Miami and Cleveland game could be kind of under the radar, maybe shoot out with pretty little ownership. So I'm really excited about this stack overall, actually. So this week and just the last few weeks in general, it's been really tough to build teams on DraftKings because of how efficient, how tight the pricing has been. But I do think one of the best plays on the entire slate will be trying to get up to Julio Jones. So for my next stack I have for you guys, I'm going to go with Matt Ryan to Julio Jones and Russell Gage to give you a little bit of savings, but we'll dig into that a little bit deeper in a minute. But I'm going to bring back that stack on the Tampa Bay side with Godwin and not Mike Evans. So let's actually start there. So Mike Evans is someone that has been clearly the alpha in this offense in Tampa Bay for the recent weeks, but I do think Godwin has some touchdown regression in the positive way coming his way very soon. But the biggest issue for me with Mike Evans, and I struggle with Mike Evans overall in these scenarios, is that he is kind of a guy that's going to make his bread on the deeper targets down the field. And if Atlanta's done one thing well on defense outside of its recent blitzing and pressure, they've actually defended the deep area of the field relatively well, top 10 this year when it comes to that. The short area of the field is where they struggle. Like, it's why we always wanted to target running backs with them in the past as well. So 30th in the league at defending the short area of the field. I think that's Godwin territory for me in this spot. So I actually like him a lot more, but I mentioned the pressure for Atlanta. So this team that has been pressuring a lot more lately, I mentioned it as a concern for Kyle Allen last week. But the one thing that really stands out from the Atlanta side of the ball is basically over the beginning of the season, 33% pressure rate. And then they come out of their bye, and now out of nowhere, they've got a pressure rate of over 40%. So that's a spot where I'd think that Jameis could make some mistakes. So that might just kind of lower the ceiling for this really chalky game overall. But I think in particular, if I'm choosing between Mike Evans and Godwin, it has me on Godwin a little bit more, because what if he can't get down the field because Jameis is seeing a little bit more pressure? So I do have some worry when it comes to that. But I think that on the side of the ball with Julio, it's just really tough to kind of think that anyone's going to be able to stop him. He's $8K, so you get $1,300 in savings from Michael Thomas. I do think that the plays overall in this game should be solid. Both teams are going to want to pass. Obviously, a massive pass funnel situation for Atlanta facing Tampa Bay this week. 28 implied team total. Just, I talk about weighted opportunity a lot, but right there with Odell Beckham, Michael Thomas, John Brown at the top over the last 4 weeks. So interested in Julio. He's going to have that eruption at some point. Another thing that I really put a lot of emphasis on at the wide receiver position is yards per route run. So that's one of those metrics where I think you kind of, just historically, you're going to consistently find some of the best wide receivers in the NFL when it comes to that. So Michael Thomas, Julio Jones, Mike Evans, Amari Cooper, John Brown. Those are the guys that are leading the way on this slate. So I think this could be a blow-up spot for Julio, someone that certainly has some touchdown progression coming his way. I think that if there was a spot for him to just go completely crazy and have a score to where you have to have him in GPPs, it could be this week. So we've talked about a lot of guys that are pretty expensive. So Russell Gage, kind of a price play for me, but massive total. I actually think that a lot of people played him last week for savings as well, and might be a little bit disappointed in his point total. But if he gets into the end zone with that play that got called back last week, we're thinking a lot different about the Russell Gage play. So he's someone that hasn't seen, I guess last week he had 4 targets, but the 2 weeks before, 5 and 9 targets, and hasn't had a really large ceiling. But again, it's really tough to build teams on DraftKings in particular. These last couple of weeks, he has a red zone target in each of the last 3. I think that Gage with Julio and Matt Ryan is going to be kind of a necessity if you really want to try and get up to some of these running back plays that we're going to want as well. So we talked about a couple stacks that might end up gaining some steam. So I kind of want to go off the board a little bit with the last one this week. And one of the things that I like to do in tournaments is have a cheaper stack, but also one that will be super contrarian. So for me this week, it's actually going to be Mitch Trubisky to Taylor Gabriel. So Mitch Trubisky, 5,100. Again, not someone that I'm actively trying to play basically ever, but 5K, like that range that is really thin this week at the quarterback position. So 5,100. He's not going to be owned against this Giants team that basically has been giving it up to everyone through the air. So I get the concerns with Trubisky. He hasn't been running as much this year. He's not pushing the ball downfield. Totally get all of that. But he is a home favorite in this spot where there could be some scoring to be had, at least based on what the Giants have been able to stop or lack thereof through the air. So Taylor Gabriel is someone that really stood out to me overall at 4,200. He's someone that just seems like he's too cheap based on his opportunity. So if he ends up seeing a decent amount of even if Janoris Jenkins ends up being on Allen Robinson, for example, you could see DeAndre Baker on Taylor Gabriel a ton in this game. And I think that that's a matchup that he can certainly win. And it's a price thing for him as well. So basically you get Mitch Trubisky at 5,100, Taylor Gabriel at 4,200. And then if you don't want to bring anyone back on the Giants side of the ball, it's just a really cheap correlation that can get you to some of these other running back plays that will be one of the better plays, like Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, those type of guys. If you did want to have a Julio Jones type one-off, you're going to need salary to do that. So I think that it almost always, if you hit on this kind of cheaper stack, this cheaper correlation, if it ends up being super low owned and some of these other high-owned quarterback or high-owned stacks fail in some way, it can kind of help you vault up the field. So one of the things I want to do in tournaments, I talk about stacking up one side of the game, bringing it back, but people don't talk enough about the rest of their team to where there's got to be some correlation through the rest of the team as well, whether it's through like 2 plays in one game if there ends up shooting out. So someone like in one game, so maybe you go with Gabriel and then you go with someone on the other side for the Giants. Maybe it's Saquon Barkley at super low ownership, something like that. But these little mini game stacks in addition to your main stack is something that I definitely think can work in larger field tournaments. If you want to learn more about how to be a profitable DFS player, start now by hitting the subscribe icon in the bottom right-hand corner, but don't miss the rest of my content throughout the week. In particular, my post on Instagram every Saturday. I'm going to go through my top 5 plays at each position. Instagram.com/Joe Holka. I'll see you over there.